almost forgot that part.
Gotta have the clapperboard.
You gotta have that. Goodness. That bad boy kind of right there. And
So I love this. At the tail end of summer, we come into this room, and the first thing you say is, "What are we going to talk about today?"
I know. Well,
zero prep for this.
I'm like,
week.
we're in summer mode, which I do feel is we're like the pressure of summer quickly evaporating.
We've got this week and next week, and then we've got to get serious.
Then we got to get real serious. But it's like, all right. Well, also the air conditioning is back.
It is.
So
yes.
Absolutely. I'm like,
110 outside and actually
God.
Decent inside.
Yeah, manageable. Well, still,
Right.
Yeah, it was even this morning, like this is that time of year where it's like insane. I mean, 7 a.m. and it's already well over 90 degrees.
I know, yes.
And anything you do is just, it's just miserable. But yeah, so we get in, it's back, air conditioning, we sit down, it's like, what do you want to talk about? It's one of those kind of fun days.
It is, yes. The serendipitous potpourri of Modem Futura.
That's right. Putting it in, it's like, I'm like, still in summer, I'm like, I put everything in do not disturb, don't bug me. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot happening still. It's summer. I want to try to keep today, let's try to keep it a little bit lighter. I feel like we really got cranky on some AI stuff, which, hey, it is deserved. I feel like AI deserves some cranky pushback every now and then because it's a little insane. I will mention AI at least once though, because from the time we last recorded to now, there's been this thing, like they've been dropping a new product / feature like almost weekly.
I know,
it feels.
Yes.
Back originally it was like the agent mode, then it was the education, the study mode.
And you've got new versions coming out. So everybody is talking about GPT-5, which has been rumored for ages now. Anthropic just dropped Claude Opus 4.1.
Okay.
I love the fact we go from 4 to 4.1. That is the big thing.
Well, it's someone who is as a longtime Xbox owner, like you don't get too set on the naming convention because it's Xbox, Xbox 360, Xbox One, Xbox, and you're like, okay, just the names don't mean
Futura 3.56.
That's right. We could get decimals in there. Why not?
#2. Yes.
I like it. But yeah, but also I was like, OpenAI just released their first, I'm pretty sure it's the first one they've ever done publicly, is their open weight model.
They have,
which is huge.
Yes. Yep.
And it is interesting because again, there's a part of me that wonders.
And is this the one that they hesitated on? I know they were going to do something a few weeks ago, and Sam Altman said, we've got some concerns here, some safety, security concerns, so we're going to take this a little slowly.
I don't know, but that would make a lot of sense.
Yes.
Especially because it is open weight. It's available for people to download via, you can play with it in certain places online, of course, but you can go right to Hugging Face, which is a wonderful resource and platform where you can download lots of different kinds of AI models and things like that, that you can then install on your own machine and start having it. And I'm planning to do that. I have not done it yet. It's one of those things where it's sort of like that wait and see moment where like
on your super powerful Arizona State University laptop.
Yeah, it's revved up, man. Well, that's the nice thing. I mean, not a plug for Apple computers at all, but the silicon chips in these things like the M series, these are phenomenal. Even the old, like the original M1, the first ones, those are quite powerful at running local models. I've been running, I think I mentioned this before. I do use an AI tool for transcribing our
Whisper,
audio.
Yes. Also OpenAI, yes.
Yeah, and it's a Whisper. And then the nice thing about that, it is a local model that you use. So it's all happening on machine. Nothing goes to the cloud.
Yeah.
But even that is incredibly, it's incredibly impressive when you're like, how long is this going to take? You throw it in a 2-hour thing and it's like, just a few moments.
Right.
And it's like, there you go.
Yeah. But now, even more people can start experimenting on their own. Of course, OpenAI isn't the only company to do this.
No, not at all.
So Meta have got their open weight models.
Yep. The Llama.
Yes.
Yep.
Was it DeepSeek Chinese one?
Yep. There's out there.
So
there's quite a few.
Plenty of models out there where if people want to mess with an AI model.
Mistral, they've had one.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think notably OpenAI is actually, certainly in terms of like the big players, like one of the last to actually put out one of these open weight models, I think. I mean, Google hasn't done it. I don't think they've done one.
Can't remember.
At least not in the Gemini, lifespan.
Yes.
But yeah, it's really interesting. And, I mean, there's a lot, I copied a snippet here of a lot of the stuff. But it is they're releasing 2 models. So one is a gigantic 120 billion parameter model. The other one's smaller at 20.
And I love the fact that we just, these figures roll off our tongues. Who knows what that means? 128 billion
parameters of secret sauce.
I live and breathe this stuff. I have no idea what that means.
I know. It's,
it's big.
It's big. It's large. And what that translates, if you're thinking, I'm going to put this on my machine, it's like, how much can you actually, because these models, to put it in perspective, like these Whisper ones, right, that you download, I mean, they're, several gigs in size in terms of just how large the model is that you download and install on your computer. And so these aren't 120 gigs, it's 120 billion parameters. So I don't know what the actual file size these beasts are. But it's interesting. And they're licensed under the Apache 2.0 license, which might not mean anything to most people, but basically what it means.
We're talking technical gobbledygook today.
Well, and now, finally, yes, we've done it. We could talk all nerd stuff right now. But for what it means for people who are curious about like what you can do with one of these things when you download is under an Apache 2.0 license, you can essentially freely build copyleft material. So you are basically allowed to build new products, new things off of that.
Okay, yes.
Without having to do essentially like, you don't have to give any commercial licensing back to the original.
You don't have to license the original.
Right. And that's part of the thing. So you can take this, you can make a new, you can customize it, you can make a new commercial deployment out of these things.
Which of course, this is one of the really exciting things we're seeing with AI. Not that we're going to talk about AI today, but the fact that now anybody who wants to can start building these models, playing with them, enhancing them, extending them. And that's where the really interesting, cool applications begin to emerge, because it's not just the big companies doing this. It's everyday people who just happen to have a computer and some time and a little bit of nous. And the fact that you can actually use AI to teach yourself how to do this. You download a model and you go to ChatGPT and say, I haven't got the focus what I'm doing, please help. And it will step you through it step by step.
Step by step. Worst timed coffee sip in the history of our show, I think.
Dead air, Sean. Not allowed to have dead air.
Oh my goodness! You got to embrace the dead air, build suspense, or at least that's what I say. No, I think that's incredibly cool because if people have been listening since the NVIDIA had announced that small one, how bad I geeked out over that.
That you occasionally mention.
Yes, but again, because what I get goosebumps about is that. Sort of democratization, if you will, of that technology, so that it's this concept of going back into the garage, right? That individual people, organizations, clubs, schools, whatever, will have access to play with these locally in a way where they are working on them in terms of what are their needs. And because otherwise you're waiting for someone to build something that also, solves the problem you have versus you going, you know what, I have a unique situation. I want to use it for X, Y, and Z that doesn't really exist. How might I use this to do that?
See, that's it. Yes.
And you can go. And what we've seen.
And it crosses boundaries as well. With some limitations. But generally, if you've got internet access and you've got a computer, no matter where in the world you are, you can do this. I mean, even the internet access, you only need temporary internet access to get it down onto your computer.
And then I'm tempted now that we talked about it, I'm tempted to go to Hugging Face right now and see how big is this bad boy?
Having started off by saying we're not going to talk about AI, we should probably wrap this up and get to the intro and think of something else to talk about.
Yeah. Or it's like, watch. Here's what not to do. Let me download this on air and have oh no, what happened?
Yes.
That's a good idea. We'll take a break here and we'll be right back. All right. Well, I'm Sean Leahy, joined by my podcasting co-host extraordinaire,
Andrew Maynard.
And that means this is Modem Futura, the show that explores the intersection of technology, society, and the possible, probable, and preferable futures, asking deep questions like what does it mean to be human in the future? So let's put the AI stuff behind us for a little bit, or at least as best we can, because it'll probably come back up.
Right.
What's burning? Because I've got one thing I drove in with, so I'll hold it.
Okay,
but I'm curious if there's anything burning on your mind.
Well, as we were talking about earlier, I'm working on this really big book project at the moment, which with AI. We're not going to talk about that. But
it lasted 10 seconds.
But I would say this is just a glimpse into the mind of an author, because I write books, and the writing process is always interesting to me. It's really hard to start with, to get those words and ideas down on the page, and it's doubly hard because I'm not a writer. I've always been really bad at words and language, which means that it's blood, sweat, and tears getting them out.
Which is funny to hear, because how many books have you officially published?
A couple of books, yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But it's because I've developed the discipline to do it, despite the fact that I'm not very good at it. But there is that point that I reach, and I'm sure other authors feel it, where you've got the raw material in front of you and you start editing it line by line, word by word. And it's like sort of a sculptor will describe, you can feel that the shape, the form of what's inside that rough draft.
Right.
And you're chipping away at those words to reveal what's inside. And I love this part of the process, but it is all consuming.
Yeah.
So I have got nothing in my brain at the moment
apart
from the
funny.
words.
I believe the first thing you said this morning, you're like, I am not eating, I'm not sleeping. I'm like, it's just all consuming.
I know.
I think it is fascinating. So so setting aside the AI portion of that.
Yes.
It's interesting to hear, just again, from someone who is a published author like that with books, to being like, I hate writing books. It's terrible. But I think one thing that would be interesting I have a front row seat to this also, but in terms of lessons learned, like I'll interview you about this then, I guess.
Okay.
That's what's happening. In our next segments of, but so I'm curious, how has the writing process felt different this time with using AI tools as opposed to no AI?
This is complex, and actually this is something that we will need to come back to in the future, because it's my thinking is evolving here, and when this book is out, I think that's when we can really dive deep. But I'm approaching this. So writing is my craft. It's part of what defines me. So I am deeply resistant to the idea of handing over that craft to artificial intelligence. And we may have talked about this. I wrote a piece about this, which is going to be in an edited book, which probably won't come out until next year, which is a little bit sad, because
part of the problem with
I would love for
traditional
people to
publishing,
read it now.
Exactly.
But in that, I very intentionally said, I'm not going to touch AI with this, because I wanted this to be me. I wanted it to be my soul and my heart as a writer coming into it. And that's typically how I write. There's something which is inherently me in my writing. This piece that I'm doing at the moment is very, very different from that. It's a piece I'm working with a co-author, and we set out intentionally to say, what happens if we bring in a third co-author here, which is artificial intelligence? And we're working with Anthropic's Claude, which is, to be honest, amazing.
Interesting.
I've been blown away by it. But the experience has been really interesting. We found that working with the AI, it can both synthesize and enhance our ideas in ways that we just wouldn't have been able to see ourselves. So it's absolutely extending what we can do as writers. It is drafting prose that's blow me away, certainly. I've been moved to tears at times with what I've read.
That's crazy.
And yet that sort of baseline of text, amazing as it is, it still feels like AI. So now, as part of the process, you've got that part where I go in as the human editor, and actually I can again see the story inside. The story which was part crafted by AI, part crafted by us, and I'm chipping away at the words to reveal that story. So it's a very different process in some ways to what I usually follow. And I probably wouldn't do this as a matter of course, but it's been a fascinating learning experience.
Well, it's been an interesting sort of experiment to kind of watch kind of as that sort of play out. It's interesting because I feel like I've felt a lot of those tensions as well, and maybe other people who are listening who use AI routinely. There is a yeah, I mean, I don't know how to put it exactly. A sense of like, it's almost, there's a mechanicalness to the language.
Right, yes.
Which, again, if you look at what it's trained on.
Right. So I've got to tell you this because it feeds directly into that. So we're at the part with this draft now where I ran it through, again, Claude as a critical editor to sort of give feedback on what's working and what's not. And we've developed a pretty sophisticated prompt sequence with this. So my prompts are usually several thousand words long. They're not small prompts. These are really
massive.
The prompts are books in themselves almost. But it's commentary on this. It didn't know that it had been co-written with an AI. It basically said, "This is too perfect." And it literally said, a human author has good days and bad days. Sometimes they write better than other days, and you expect that variation. This is too uniform.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It jarred with me because I think as a human writer, I try and make sure that I have that consistency. But clearly, I'm supposed to be putting more inconsistency into my writing.
Yeah, right. Well, or like, where's your tell? Right, you know what I mean? Like, yes. we all have those. Right? I know. And if you write, even if it's just emails, you use that one word way too many.
Oh yeah.
Right?
And
we all have it.
And I lean into that these days. I want to make sure that my tells are there so you can see that it's my writing.
Or if you have that word you just can never spell, like even after 30 years, you start to avoid it. Like
I've got a whole lexicon of those.
Yeah, right. Well, it's like how about we meet next tomorrow? Right, I'll see you Wednesday.
Right, yes.
But it is funny though, because again, using these tools when they start pumping out this material is so often that there is this, it's like too much, or but I really like the way that you were putting is that when some of this content or this prose comes back, what you're doing is kind of peeling you're like lifting off the concrete or the metal and like letting the organic part shine through again.
That's it. Yes.
Bringing some the life back into it, or what that human touch back into it. Because I would be curious when the AI, if it detects like this is too AI, like what does that mean? Like when you read it,
I'm actually a little anxious now, sort of when this eventually gets out and people start reading it, what they're going to think. And we're very upfront with the process.
Yeah,
that
for sure. I mean, again, I think that's
yes.
part of the power of it, right? Yeah. Is like, because this is, again, I come back, I still can't let go of this, low grade background steel concept. Right? Because it's beautiful.
So if anybody is really confused by this, you have to go back to 3 episodes.
That's right. It's a gem. But if you're new, if you're just catching up or you're listening out of order or whatever, the concept is when it comes to artificial intelligence, that matches essentially this idea of radioactive isotopes in steel that
occurred at a specific time in history.
Yeah, think Oppenheimer, right? They're doing, the weapon testing, all this kind of stuff. Was it the Trinity? That's the name of it, right?
Trinity was one of the big ones.
New Mexico. Anyway, but it was such a massive global event that these radioactive isotopes, which are harmless,
but they contaminated steel around.
They contaminated
so you got sort of pre-steel and post-steel.
But
it's the same with AI. You've got your pre-Chat GPT and post-Chat GPT with the AI-generated content.
I wasn't alone, but early on, I remember specifically, and I did the most, annoying academic thing is I wrote a paper and put it in the title. So it's like, it's there, a record. That's my record. But calling you're referring to the Gen AI explosion as a Cambrian explosion.
Yes.
Same kind of concept is that looking back through time, you can identify a point where there is a record that is different above it or below it, depending on something that happened, right? The Cambrian explosion, life, right? We have a massive explosion of life fossil record. With the low grade steel, there's this massive impetus of a techno signature from a species who was able to control nature in a way that is not, as far as we know it, not an easy thing to do. And then I think, so what's interesting is, again, having this, this new, we're on the, what would you say, the north side, the top side, the right-hand side of this line? I guess
I have no idea but
I guess if you think about a timeline.
But you can see it infused in everything, in sort of what you read, but especially in images. So I still feel very much that looking at AI images, there's a signature there. Where individually these images are very clever, they're very smart, they're very polished, but they've all got something of a sameness to them. And I'm getting to the point where I'm desperate for some human messiness.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I think again, if you're thinking in pendulums, things swing. The duration of that swing can be generations, it can be decades, or it can be months, right? Or even minutes, depending on who you are, right? Yeah. But coming back to, I think there was a lot of fear and angst over initially a lot of especially the image tools, right?
Right, yes. Yeah.
All the graphic designers are out the window. And there might be a case where there will be a reduction of the fringe of where some of those people were. Mm-hmm. But I think, as with all these things, once you swing so far to one side, you start going, oh, it was nice before when you had, and again, if people who are listening to our show, if they follow along with the LinkedIn newsletter, I use, I put a cartoon illustration.
You do, yes.
And those are all AI generated.
Yes.
They're usually I don't spend a lot of time or effort on it, which you might be able to tell.
Did I ever tell you I'd noticed it? No.
Sometimes I have a third head or something, you never know.
Yes.
But what's interesting is even those styles, you're they're boring. They start to get boring.
They do,
even though technically you're because what is wearing off? And this is, again, this goes back, I think there's no shortage of clips.
They're like candy.
It is.
First time, mind-blowing. Second time, nice. 20th time,
you're whatever, and that's kind of what happens. And I think, whether it be the writing, whether it be these things, is once the luster of the impressiveness of these tools wears off, you then start going, okay, well, that was cool and that was shiny and it caused a bunch of, people to, run around like crazy. But now let's kind of settle and get a little bit more serious. And then you start going, where's the human touch? Where's the organic nature of it?
Yes.
Not that you will say you can't use AI, because I don't think you can anymore. Because again, we're past that threshold.
That's right. AI is here, but then how do you find the humanity with it? And so it's no surprise that this podcast is coming from an initiative called the Futura Being Human.
Yeah, although I might spend some time thinking about this.
I'm really disappointed that in our efforts not to talk about AI, we've ended up talking about artificial intelligence.
I know. Well, but I think one thing and I'll steer us away. I've got something we can talk about. But I think that is also a reflection of the world that we are sitting in. Is that
very much you can't avoid it?
It's like trying,
in the air we breathe.
It's in the air. Yeah, very well. Maybe
not. But yes.
I just inhaled some GPT-5. Oh no.
But now, if we're living in a simulation, maybe yes,
this is true. Well, one thing I will point out, though, I'll end with this about the AI piece, because it brings a little, so people who are also looking at more of the serious transitional technologies. So Gartner Hype Cycle.
Yep.
I think we've talked about some of those before.
We've touched on it a couple of times.
Real quickly, just a background for people who are new to these. These are essentially a tool that is used to just plot as essentially the innovation of a new idea or technology over time.
And how it typically moves.
That's right.
Yes,
and there's a standard curve for this thing. So I'm going to draw you this curve if you're listening.
Draw it in our minds,
that's
Sean.
Right.
Yes.
That's right. So if you're a visual person, think deeply about it. But I mean, if you think about it, as you would see, look at a graph, right? So it starts in the lower left-hand corner and goes up like a big mountain and then comes way down.
Into a trough.
Into a trough, the best place, the trough of disillusionment.
Yes.
And then it slowly comes back up to
again.
a slope.
Yes,
And so the point of this curve is that the curve stays the same, because it's just a model for where these things are on a trajectory. And so when things are brand new, they start on that left-hand side and then they rocket to the top of that peak. So think of like a wave, this mountain.
And can you remember what we call the peak?
The peak of inflated expectations.
Right.
And that's where the biggest hype happens, which is like,
it's going to change the world. Life is going to be different next year than ever before.
I used to use an example when I would do like a talk with a big group of people. I used 3D TVs because we've been far enough away from them. The financial sting of if everyone bought one, but it was at a time 3D TVs, right? Were there? Oh, this is the most amazing consumer product, whatever. Very quickly did that thing plummet down into the trough of disillusionment, which is just and everything does that.
When the hype bubble bursts and everybody realizes there's nothing really
that's right.
here.
And it's not, and the thing that some people I think might get confused with, because the names might sound a little pejorative when it's like the trough of disillusionment. And what it really is referring to is like nothing
mythic, really.
Yeah,
I mean, this is the
right.
journey. Yes.
Nothing. Oh, we should do this is giving me some ideas. We should do something fun with this, like the journey of the hype cycle told as like one of those 5 stories.
Forget about the hero's journey.
Oh, forget about it. We got the hype cycle journey.
Yes.
It's just laying all there. This is beautiful. Even with like a redemption arc and everything.
Well, you could probably actually.
Oh my God, this is really good.
Superimpose almost any movie. So this is a total aside before you get to the trough of disillusionment.
It kind of is a witch hat, really.
But I remember years ago when I was teaching a class on science communication, and I was trying to sort of capture this idea of, at the time, the hero's journey and apply it to a movie. And if anybody remembers the Paddington movies, there are 3 of them now. I used the first Paddington movie because I thought this was wonderful. You can sort of see the narrative arc.
You can kind of plot it out.
And the 2 grad students who I was working with looked at this and said, "Do you think anybody has ever seen that movie?" But yes, we could apply the hype journey to any movie.
It's great, and also I think if anyone's out there going, I need a good band name. I'm like Trough of Disillusionment. These are great band names. Also, I'm just saying.
But sorry, I interrupted you. So the Trough of Disillusionment is not all pejorative because we come out of that.
Right.
Yes.
So the thing to remember, right, is people use the hype cycle. A lot of times they'll use it to trash stuff or use it to hype stuff up. But the reality is everything goes through this, like everything. So when you go through the trough of disillusionment, that's just a necessary portion of. Now the question is how quickly do you get there?
Yep.
How long do you stay there? And those can have some implications on the tool or the technology or whatever.
Yeah, but the key thing here is it's not that the technology is bad.
Nope.
It's just that it's been overhyped. So this is almost like a course correction.
It is.
Where people sort of
That's
say
a good way of
there's
looking
nothing
at it.
here. But the people that are developing it know that there is something solid there in the foundations.
And I would argue that the trough of disillusionment is the necessary bath that all things need to go through to come out clean on the other side, because they get dirty with all that hype, right?
It's hype washing.
That's right. It literally, I like that. We're cooking with this. So the point of that trough of disillusionment is to shake off the hype, to say, no.
Not that it has a point. I mean, this is just something that happens. It's observational.
That's right.
There's nobody sort of saying, okay, AI has reached this point. We're going to press the trough of disillusionment button now, and we're going to bring this about.
No.
We observe this happening.
And the faster, and to be honest, it's a necessary step, because what comes after it is where the real magic with these technologies or innovations. Right. These aren't always like a concrete, like a tool that you can touch. Sometimes these are bigger concepts.
Yeah.
And that is when it goes up to the slope of enlightenment. Again, great band name, great, right? This is on your redemption arc, right? You have you go down, you have your, you have your major action, whatever.
Every Hollywood movie from now on is going to follow the hype cycle.
And then the ultimate goal is you exit the hype cycle when you arrive at the plateau of productivity, right? Which sounds really boring, but so if you think about all the cool transformational technologies that have come before, the computer, the internet, these have long exited.
You can map this onto
everything. Everything, right? Yes. The automobile, the airplane, literally they all had this, they all go through this.
So I've got to ask you at this point, Sean, where is Modem Futura? Are we in the trough of disillusionment yet?
Oh, no way. Man, we're on the innovation trigger. We are on the way up.
Oh no, don't say that, because it means that we got to crash at some point. I thought we were on the slope of enlightenment.
You know what? We could be both. I don't know.
But that's it. I sort of switching back. That's a serious thing here, because of course there are different sort of lenses and perspectives here. So from a very public perspective, you may have consumers who are already in that trough of disillusionment, but in say sort of the VC world or the startup world, they may be somewhere very different on the curve. So multiple curves depending on the community.
That's right. And so even consultancy companies like Gartner, for example, who publish this curve or whatever, they have one for every industry, everything. Right. And something that I've talked about and would like to explore deeper is sort of mixing these models together. So one, you have this hype cycle curve that follows essentially the hype around the technology, and then also the diffusion model of how these things spread.
Yes, how innovation spreads through society.
That's right. And to see where those intersections sort of happen, because they're all wildly different depending on, and so in the way things diffuse typically, right, is you have early adopters who jump on things right away, early majority, then you have the late majority.
That's right. We should say the diffusion model is the idea, exactly as you say, that you have that initial adoption by a few, and then as the technology matures, it finds its way into most people's hands.
Yeah,
and then that's the theory.
Yeah, and then eventually, like in the largest group are essentially the early majority and the late majority, right? That these are that's like the meat of a bell curve. And then of course you have the people who are on both sides, the people who jump into it right away, and the people who are like the wait and see, or I don't want to.
And of course, I love this idea of sort of merging and blending the models, because of course nothing is fixed. And I was thinking about a great example of MP3 players, iPods. So you saw the initial sort of hype around sort of MP3 players, amazing. The iPod came out, just utterly sort of mind-blowing. And then people got used to it. It wasn't such a big thing. And now we don't even use iPods. But the essence of what we were doing with music files is still there. So as well as sort of getting up to that plateau of productivity, the landscape has changed. But its seeds were in that original cycle.
That's right. And as it exits out, like its exit of the hype cycle, it would be interesting it would be an interesting thing. You could take it either innovation by innovation or sector by sector, is to see when it exits the hype cycle, where is it in the diffusion? Right. Yes, like, is that the early majority, late majority?
Yes. Where does this occur? Yes. How fast does it occur?
Yes. It's a really cool tool, because these are, I really enjoy sharing these tools when I do a futures talk or do these things, because again, these are those tools you can use to combat the hype, because you can go, like, I mean, for example, I'm looking at right now, I've got the Gartner Hype Cycle this is the 2025 Artificial Intelligence Hype Cycle.
Yes.
So all the technologies and all the things
back to AI, sorry.
Well, because going back to just when we were talking about how the way we're kind of wanting more of that organic touch again. It shouldn't be a surprise then that generative AI is not at the bottom, but it has entered the trough of disillusionment.
Interesting.
Because I think what we're starting to see is you're starting to see the operationalization of it across sectors, across industries.
It's becoming mundane. But also, so this is really interesting. So we're seeing this where certainly from the business sector, big companies like OpenAI and Anthropic, they're still pushing this as being the transformative technology. So in their minds, they're still playing the game as if they're going up on the hype cycle. To people who have really been buying into this technology and trying to assess it, they're on the downward sort of cycle into the trough of disillusionment, because they're looking at this and thinking, you're promising the world, and all I'm seeing is a 0.1 version increase. There's nothing that is shattering my world here.
Not at all.
And that's where they're asking really deep questions. But on the other hand, you have people that haven't even got onto the hype cycle yet. So I talk with colleagues who are still grappling with, what do you do when a computer uses, when a student uses ChatGPT in a classroom? That was an interesting Freudian slip, talking about students as computers. But yeah, so you have people
humans were the first computers.
Right. People who are utterly oblivious to this hype cycle that are just beginning to get there. So and so it's so fascinating that you begin to see those different phases and different people at different parts of that cycle.
And also really hard not to snarkily send a message, be like, 2022 called. They want their question back. But yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. And of course, right now, and so these always drop. What was the date of this? It's June. So middle of the year. An absolute centered peak of height of peak of inflated expectations.
Not agentic AI, surely.
AI agents. Sure enough, right there. And
who would have believed that we're at the peak of the hype cycle? With that? I thought this was a mature technology that everybody knows is going to change the world.
And I think, and if nothing else, it justifies our cranky pushback on AI agent episode, because right now, this is when it's like, if you're a defender against the hype, this is when your sword and shield is out.
But of course,
it's ridiculous.
But this is also where this is incredibly helpful. So if you're an organization that is looking at investing over the next 5, 10, 20 years in a technology, and you are buying the hype, so you are thinking agentic AI, we have got to be there because everyone is there. and you suddenly realize you're just at that peak and everything is about to slip down into the trough of disillusion. Is it disillusion or disillusionment?
Disillusionment.
Yes. So if you're not careful, you run the risk in investing in something which is not going to deliver.
No. And if you look, I mean, again, if you're a well, one, if you are a money bags who has extra, I would entice you to invest in Modem Futura. But
because we're on the slope of enlightenment.
That's right. We're on our way up. We're at the innovation trigger. And because if you look at it, because that's a really interesting point, because where you want to make your investments typically, and all right, first of all, major disclaimer, don't take any financial advice from me. But typically, right, so you have these innovation triggers. So you want to capture these things from essentially when it first launches, right, all the way through that inflated expectation, bail before the trough of disillusionment. Because that's
which is probably where the trough of disillusionment comes from, with everyone just
dumps it. Everyone's, oh, this is not what you said. Like, again, I used to use the 3D TV model because that was like, you know, if you bought one of these, if you were sold this 3D TV at your, you know, electronics store or whatever as like the great thing, like how long did you have it in your house before you were right down at the bottom of that trough going, this thing sucks. But then the next place to pick it back up in investment is on the slope of enlightenment. When you're like, actually, this thing has tremendous value. So you could almost look at this curve too as like, you want to get in early, sell at the high, buy at the low, and take it back up, right? So you can also map these things across. You'll see it when you'll see companies getting huge amount of money, right? Getting poured in. So if we look across, you know, again, those, you know, everything that has to do right now with like either agentic AI or like the, you know, general artificial intelligence or super intelligence. That's all stuff that is still sort of way on that left side.
It is,
right?
With people investing like crazy as it goes up.
That's right. So people are pouring money into that because they're like, if this thing keeps going, it's like, I mean, a lot of it's speculative investment. You want to get in when it's cheaper and then make a ton of money and then get out before you lose the money.
That's right.
I mean, it makes that's how you
sell when it's high.
That's right. And so you see a lot of that. So you'll see, again, also using this as a tool to cut through so much of the BS and the hype and all that kind of stuff is you're like, oh, well, yeah, I can see why people are fanning the fuels for these things or, you know, and then you can pick a technology like this that's on one of these curves and then go find out who's doing it, where's the money coming from.
So actually, I will, getting us away from AI, I'll give you another great example, which I'm very, very familiar with, which is nanotechnology.
Yes.
So you go back 25 years now. Where
I'm playing the trombone with, I can't see this. I gotta pull it closer.
You forgot your glasses today.
Oh, jeez.
So for those who are listening, I'm trying to talk to Sean and he's picking up his computer to within 2 inches of his eyes, peering at it.
Because it's a picture. I can't enlarge it too much. I have to literally bring it closer to me. Oh my gosh.
But
anyway, yes,
nanotechnology. So early 2000s, massive excitement around this, a huge amount of hype. Nanotechnology was going to solve every problem in the world. Massive investments, and then sort of disillusionment when people realize actually this isn't going to solve every problem in the world. And if you look at the headlines, I mean, early 2000s, loads of headlines in mainstream media about nanotechnology, this, nanotechnology, that. By 2005, 2006, completely disappeared. Nobody was talking about nanotech. And yet now you begin to see really strong products and progress coming out of that fundamental research that was going on. So even though nobody really talks about nanotech these days, it's underpinning so much of what we do with technology. And so now you're beginning to sort of come back up onto that plateau of productivity, where this is now a foundational technology that is enabling things, including the chips that are fueling artificial intelligence.
Oh, sure. I mean, and the fact that there's so much, I mean, that's one of the tells, right? Is again, the length of time, whatever it is, lives on that hype cycle, like the curve, right, is in some ways irrelevant to its long-term success. I mean, again, think about all the things that enable all of the crazy, amazing things that we do today. They're nowhere on here. They're gone. They're way off, right? Because this is, and again, the time frame, that's another thing to consider. The time frames are like fungible. But generally speaking, the way like this particular tool will map these things out is usually the longest it'll give it is a 10 years or more.
Right.
And those are usually very speculative technologies. Like, I mean, going back to the nano stuff, that was one that was always on there because it used to creep students out, was smart dust.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And so, but it was like smart dust. I don't think it ever left the bottom left-hand corner. It just, it was like,
And smart dust in as the idea of the sort of, these little sort of micro or sort of nano-sized particles that can surveil, they can record, they can report back. So
terrifying, really.
Everywhere is just scattered with these things.
Wasn't there, oh my gosh, it wasn't a Michael Crichton book, Prey? Or no?
Oh, Prey was his big nanotechnology
that was a
book at the height of nanotech hype.
Yeah.
And that freaked everybody out because it was a story about how nanotechnology goes wrong and completely threatens life on Earth.
Well, I just remember too, I mean, I think if I read it whenever that came out, so it's been 20 years probably, right? Yeah. As I remember, something particularly freaky was this cloud of nanobots that would basically could change your face.
Right.
Like, right. So you think about, you're like, well, today I want to look, I want to be more handsome today.
But of course, I talk about hype cycles. When that came out, that was sort of astounding stuff. Now there are so many movies where you see something similar that it's a shrug and it's seen that already.
Seen
not
it.
Interested. Yep.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. And I pulled up all this hype cycle talk got me all wound up. So I just pulled up the emerging technologies one, which is a more interesting catch-all. And it's interesting to see. Again, it overlays. You'll see a lot of things like the AI agents again, right smack dab in the top. But looking further to the left, it's interesting to see some of the things that are kind of popping up here. So of course, there's more AI stuff in there, but it's more specific uses, right?
Okay, yes,
so domain-specific Gen AI tools or things like, and of course, but really interesting to see other things over there too. So spatial computing is still way over on the innovation trigger.
Very interesting. Which is things like Apple's Vision Pro.
Spatial computing is something that I get really excited about because, what's exciting for me about like the concept of spatial computing is not in necessarily the narrow perspective of that technology, but also in the potential ecosystem of what that means.
Of course, yes.
Because it was, we were talking back when we did the World Economic Forum, the 10 technologies to watch, right? This idea of this distributed sensor network and how, again, we think about these next levels of interaction with each other, with environments, having spatial computing devices that, and there's another branch. I don't know if it's technically inside spatial computing, but ambient computing.
Okay.
Which is a really cool concept where you have devices, when I say devices, I mean this could be a lamp, it could be an object that is digitally controlled, not necessarily what you think of as like a laptop or desktop computer, that can respond to an environment to whatever. A simple example is weather.
Right.
So an ambient computing device, for example, you can set up that you can do now with like in-home, smart home kits and things like that. So you can have, for example, a light in your office or your home that the color of the light tells you what the temperature is, right?
Yes,
if it's blue, it's cold. If it's red, or warm, whatever. But it's a way of providing people in an environment information in a very subtle, not obtrusive way.
Yes.
That is just part of your ecosystem. So it becomes, in a way, it becomes in some ways you can almost think about it as like, well, we can bring a little bit of nature inside the home because we are. As humans, we are wired for this concept of ambient computing.
Multi-sensory
we bring
experiences.
That's right. I mean, we are absorbing so many of these signals around us in the real world. But this is a way of sort of mediating that with technology, which could be anything. Your appointment is, your calendar alert. Instead of having this thing distract you and ding and beep and flash in your face or whatever, like maybe something just changes from red to blue or, I don't know. But that's an area that I get really excited about.
We could take this so many interesting directions. When it fuses with biotech, for instance, you have that house plant in the corner that suddenly starts waving.
Yeah. Or literally turns colors or something, right?
Yes,
or like,
but
you have your tattoo on your skin that is like,
but also and we're going to get back to sort of what else is on the hype cycle in a second, but it also shows just how important the combinations between these different technologies are. So you mentioned the iPhone, and I remember writing back in 2017, 2018 in my book Films from the Future, using the iPhone as an example of technology innovation isn't just one thing. So we may think about the big things like AI or nanotechnology or synthetic biology or quantum computing, but actually the interesting stuff happens when you've got this convergence and this fusion of thousands of different technologies. So the phone is the culmination of many, many, many different technologies, and pretty much everything around us is.
And to be honest, it's funny that we even call it the phone.
Right.
Because its telephony capability is probably the absolute least thing it's used for.
I know, yes.
As it's right there recording us right now.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
In spatial 3D. Like,
right, yes.
You know what I mean? It's like,
we have two phones that we will never, ever make a phone call on.
That is true. We own phones that will never make a phone call. In fact, they've been neutered. I don't know. I don't know the proper term for. Maybe there is no proper term for that potentially, but they're incapable of making phone calls. We made sure of it.
The secret life of phones. I'm feeling quite sorry for them now.
Yeah, or that time when someone, a technologist opens up and is like, "I've got plans for you," and it's like, oh, from the phone's perspective, oh no, no, it's pretty wild. But again, I want to come back to spatial computing because one, we will do an episode specifically with Apple Vision Pros and stuff like that, which is a spatial computing device.
It is,
but it's just one of this much broader ecosystem. And again, coming back, so all the things that if you're in sort of like the tech sphere and you're hearing a lot of these the hypes of like, what's the next big product from, Apple or from Meta or whatever, you hear a lot about smart glasses or these other, there is this dream that we will eventually have a augmented...
And be able to immerse ourselves in an environment. So yes, when we talk about computing, it's not just on the device in front of us, but it is all around us. Yes.
And in one of the things, again, this is an area that I get excited about because a very short-term perspective on that is, of course, like VR, right? So if you've ever seen or experienced it yourself, like an Oculus, like a VR headset or something that you go into, you're locked into this environment because it literally covers up your face.
Right.
It's like this gigantic toaster on the front of your head. But then you're in a completely virtualized environment. Some devices like the Apple Vision Pro and the new Meta Quest, they do pass through. So they'll bring video camera pictures from your surrounding real world and bring those in. But that's one way. And that's a very simplistic way of thinking about like this virtual spatial environment. But for me, again, where I get excited about it is the interconnectivity of the physical space you're in, the devices that you have, and your personal, your PAN, your personal area network. There's a term that I feel like hasn't gotten any love since 2004.
I was going to say, you didn't just make that up.
No, that's when we used to talk about LANs, WANs, and PANs, like, local area network, wide area network, and personal area network, which you have. Like if you are carrying a phone, and you have like headphones,
it's these very localized networks.
Oh yeah. And
there's a whole technology around how those work, which is quite incredible.
If the human eye was capable of seeing past the visible spectrum space, what would be amazing is I would say a normal person with a smartphone walks around, the amount of radio waves that they are just, between your Bluetooth, your Wi-Fi, your cellular.
There have been digital artists that are trying to capture at least some of this, at least trying to capture the data streams from devices. But I think that they could go an awful lot further in terms of try and capture that digital aura around us all.
You totally could. That would be a really interesting, okay, 2 pits on that. I'm getting so sidetracked. I love it. One is also, if you could see that, what a noisy space, because if you think about it, if all you have is like, if I have my iPhone in my pocket and that's it, right? I am radiating a Bluetooth wireless signal, a wireless signal, an 802.11 signal. There's a cellular connection signal. There's an NFC chip capability. And then there is also just the radiation given off by all the electronics and all the things in there. So that alone is creating this cloud. But one thing that is interesting in terms of, again, I think a broader technology that can be used, again, how the application of it, we'll leave that to people to decide if this is a positive thing or negative, is being able to start to track, humans or other fleshy, water-based creatures, right?
Just by how they occlude that?
Yes. So what you can do, in fact, you've been able to do this for a while, but there's even technology that we use. I've used it here at ASU's campus, for example, that detects people based on essentially how they disrupt a Wi-Fi signal.
Interesting.
And so you can put in these very low power, they're very safe, they just flood the area with a spectrum, like 2.4 gigahertz wireless spectrum space, and through the disruption of that radio signal, you can start to go
identify bodies. Yes.
That is a person. That is a person. That is a person. Yeah. And the more sophisticated you can put those sensors in, not only can you start to see generally where people are, you can get some really scary levels of accuracy.
I hate to tell you this. We've sort of done that in the optical spectrum with cameras.
Yes, but you can see through walls.
Right, yes.
You can see. That's a nice thing. If you know this, because if you sit a room away from your router at home, you still get your wireless signal.
That's very true,
and
yes.
So
this is the X-ray version.
This is again, if you're not looking in the visual space and looking in this spectrum, the wall is nothing. It goes right through it. And with some feedback, and again, if you live in an old home,
but again,
you know how this works.
But think about that. We have created this whole environment full of these signals and these waves and these data streams, which are invisible to us, but we can't make visible. But this is all human created. Before we had these systems, none of this existed.
It was quiet.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, and so, it is fascinating. And so if you think about it like this, right, especially if you're in a more densely populated area. So like a shopping mall, a big city, university, whatever. When you're walking down the street or through the hallway, in some ways you are just kind of carving through this, like these waves, right, that are bombarding you. So you are leaving. If you could see that space, it's like you would leave this like
I am
echo
having
trail.
In my head. This is probably because the new movie is coming out. I have visions of Tron, the information data superhighway, where everything around you is constructed by data. Actually, it's got Matrix vibes as well.
Yeah,
you just need to take off the goggles and see the ones and zeros.
See the ones. Yes. If I could get a light bike, man. Game over. Well, literally, probably, because I'd probably crash it. That'd be the end of that.
But I find it so fascinating because on one hand, it's easy to sort of say, oh, this is just sci-fi, this is ridiculous. But it's not, because we are fully immersed in this environment, which is so data rich. And we can't see it, but we can make it visible with devices.
We can. And then I come back and thinking about this, again, I was like, okay, let's move down 50 years, 75 years, 100 years. And one thing you could hope, right, is, and we've talked about this back when we talked about electric vehicles and self-driving cars, is as the world, and again, the thing itself doesn't have to have a chip to be recognized, but in an ecosystem or an environment that has these sensors, is you really can start to build out a live model of everything that's happening. That within a range, right? Within a bubble. But you can start to think about the movement of people, cars, and other things in a busy intersection. Right. Yes, that the intersection can respond in real time to what is happening.
Because it's actually detecting that.
Because it's actually detecting it. And it can know, that kid just ran across the street. Let's shut all, red lights, whatever, go up. Let's try to do whatever we can. Maybe at that point, if it's 100 years, or some robot comes out and says, you can't do that anyway.
Right.
Who knows? But the potential for these systems to start to talk to each other is really incredible. I mean, one, there's a dark side there, of course.
Well, so I'm going to bring this back to AI. And I'm looking at the clock because I have this ambition of wrapping up before we hit the 60-minute mark.
Yeah,
and I'm now going to discover you've got another thing that you want to.
We didn't even talk about the thing I brought in my pocket. We'll save it for another day.
But I did want to bring this back to AI because this, I think, is where things get amazing and scary. So we've got all of this data flowing. We're generating it. We're absorbing it. We're immersed in it. We've got this ability of sensors to be able to sort of see this and make this visual. But you've got an incredible complexity of signals and patterns there. And the only technology we know of these days at the moment that can make sense of patterns that are way too complex for the human mind to comprehend is artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And large language models and their equivalents, this is what they do. They're trained on gazillion sort of bits of data. and they're trained to see patterns and associations between those so that they can predict what comes next, whether that's words, whether it's pixels, whether it's complex data streams, whatever.
Yeah.
So then the question comes, are we reaching a point where with this amazing immersive digital environment, AIs can not only see it, but they can interpret it and understand it in ways that are way, way beyond human comprehension?
Yeah, I think that is fascinating to think, to chew on.
Right.
And
which is fine if they have no concept of what it means. But what happens when AIs, if they do this, become to be aware of the meaning of things around them, or they can construct meaning?
Yeah.
What happens then when they are able to experience an environment that we live in, but we can't comprehend, and they can understand not only what that means to them, but how to manipulate it?
Yeah. And also an ability to detect other types of signals of other life forms and other things to see how it all connects. And we're sitting there, they're like, wow, we've discovered the meaning of life. You fools. It's been right in front of you this whole time. Yes. Well, and I think that's a good way to end on that sort of like sci-fi cliffhanger.
And the second cliffhanger is what you were actually going to talk about. So we'll have to come back to that.
Well, and I will end with this, with just a couple of pepperings of just to whet your appetite for things that are still coming on this innovation trigger. Because we do have things like the intelligent simulations.
Yes.
Okay. Physical AI.
Which is a huge one to talk about.
Yes.
An embodied AI. Yes.
Yes. And when it can start to really do things in the real world by itself.
Yeah.
Lots of fun stuff yet to cover. We're scratching the surface of it. That's what I love about coming in on the summer. We're like, what do you want to talk about? I don't know. Let's pull this thing up. The next thing you know, it's like we've got more to talk about that we could stuff into a month worth of stuff. But we'll save those for another show. How about
that sounds good.
Awesome.
In the meantime, from Modem Futura on the slope of enlightenment.
That's right. Taking investment now, which you can. Speaking of, you can invest by leaving us a rating and review.
There we are. Yes.
Still,
it's a social investment.
It is a social investment. It's been again tremendously fun to see our episodes hitting tops of charts here and there.
Yep.
Just absolutely fun, and we can't do that without the help and support of our listeners like you. To again help us get into these machines and be recommended to other people who are looking for these types of conversations, topics, and explorations. And the very few who just want to hear us laugh about stuff. But again, so Andrew, thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
And we'll see everybody on the next episode of Modem Futura.
We'll see you then.
And transmission.